Waterfowl migration coincides with a special time of year and the changes that come with the migration.
You know, you look at the colors around us.
Just the sheer spectacle is really breathtaking.
That's really magical for me. You think about the miles that they're covering and all the country that they're seeing, and there's not much that's cooler than that from my perspective.
When I think about conservation, I kind of look to the future. That's a treasure, I guess, that we need to protect.
Every time I go to a new body of water, there's that adrenaline comes back. It's just that excitement.
We're out there in unique situations. We see the birds doing lots of cool things. Some of the most enjoyable time that I have is out in these wild places, seeing the birds do the things that they do.
You know, a lot of people have asked me over time, why do I love duck hunting more than I love the others? And for me, it's like the dance. You're calling to try and see if they'll come dance with you.
We're a bunch of determined individuals, and we push for wetland conservation. It is our passion.
Well done!
Right. To see them cut, dip, and weave.
Let's go!
It was like the epitome of puddle duck hunting.
To watch the birds work is the real objective of the hunt.
Ducks Unlimited Television is presented by Drake Waterfowl Systems, innovators in waterfowl hunting.
Hello again, and welcome to Ducks Unlimited Television. I'm Betsy Newble. This week, we're headed to Alberta, Canada to hunt with former DU Canada President Jack Hull. We traveled through many obstacles to the Peace River, and co-host Doug Larsen and crew braved pandemic protocols to reach this beautiful and wild landscape. It was well worth the trouble, with mallards and other duck species staging in big numbers on natural lakes just south of Canada's vast Boreal Forest. Coming up next on DUTV.
Where we're at currently is just the southern edge of the Boreal Forest. So the Boreal is this massive forested area, close to 1 billion acres. That's circumpolar, so all across North America and into Europe, where we have these unique forested systems really tied together by water. 60% of the landscape could be water in many of these areas, and not surprisingly, because of that, really important to waterfowl.
It's terrific what Jack and Daryl have done up here. I mean, they really exploit that. But instead of being guys that are hunting the dry-field mallards and dry-field geese, you know, they're hunting the flip side of the record, I guess you'd say. I knew when I walked into Jack's house that he was the consummate outdoorsman. He's got deer hanging on every wall of his shed, and you know, I could just tell that this was a man who's really invested his life in sports and the outdoors. And
Jack and I spent a lot of time hunting and exploring.
You know, it's a little bit different than being on the prairies, being up in these northern boreal lakes and seeing maybe different species or different concentrations of species that come out of the boreal forest.
Probably our most memorable hunts are going to these new lakes and trying something different.
they're hunting the birds that are coming back to the water, which it makes for such a great day. I mean, you're hunting, the peak of the flight isn't, you know, that first half an hour in the morning. You're able to get out there, get everything set up, and be pretty sure that where you're going to set up, the birds are going to come and work, because the day has started to show itself already. We set up and really targeted the diver species and tried to set up for a classic, you know, North Woods lake diver hunt. Found a point, you know, along the shoreline where we thought the birds would cut across, and they worked us pretty good. We had a nice mix of ducks. This boreal is really an amazing place. It is so full of life.
Well, yeah, and it's something that you really kind of have to see to know what it's about. Somebody can tell you about it, but to come up here for you guys, I mean, we hit it at a great timing with the colors we
it's
have.
beautiful.
You know, and the birds are here, and of course, you know, we're up here. A lot of these birds are coming out of the boreal forest, you know, either on a molting migration, when they're nesting on the fens and bogs. The drakes come into the big water like this, and then you'll get birds coming out of the boreal like on in the fall that are staging here. So I mean, we're seeing geese this morning that are Arctic nesters.
Nice shot, Jack. Yep, yep.
But I think the thing that shocked me in the water that we hunted here was the absolute spectacle and the mix of birds. I think that I have seen just about every species of North American waterfowl that, you know, that one can see in Canada. I mean, short of maybe brant and cinnamon teal, The lake we hunted up here in northern Alberta has a very large concentration of Barrow's golden eyes, which is, not something you see a lot of. I mean, unless you're specifically in a couple of western states where they're more common. I've seen golden eyes since I was a teenager growing up in the Midwest, but very few Barrows, and I saw thousands in the last couple of days. Jack's an interesting guy, and what a pleasure to hunt with him, but he's the perfect guy to be involved with DU in all facets of what he does. And talking with him, I can certainly tell, and after hunting with him, that he's a very experienced outdoorsman, but also a guy who's really forward-looking and is looking towards the legacy things that he can do.
That we have folks in the hunting fraternity, as we lose more older hunters, even like myself eventually, to bring new hunters into the sport, and I'm real big on that. I'm a registered hunter mentor, and every year I take out several new folks that have never waterfowl hunted in their lives.
As president of DU Canada, or past president of DU Canada, and as vice president of DU Mexico, is really looking to make an impact on the next generation. And of course, at the end of the day, that's what we all hope for.
Ducks Unlimited Television is presented by Drake Waterfowl Systems, innovators in waterfowl hunting. Mossy Oak Shadow Grass Habitat, the official camo of Ducks Unlimited. Browning Firearms, the best there is. Native Nurseries, hand-selected, hand-grown plants for wildlife. Higdon Outdoors, quality, customer service, innovation, that's Higdon. And Ducks Unlimited's 85th anniversary, celebrating 85 years as North America's leader in wetlands conservation.
I think that this season, the word is out about the drought in the prairie pothole region, and I think almost all duck hunters that don't know a whole lot about it, there's a tendency to panic.
Finally, I get a chance to see the Boreal Forest. Can you explain to me sort of why we're having this drought, but the Boreal is unscathed? Is it just weather patterns, or is it always this good up here?
Maybe I'd use a sort of stock market analogy. The prairies are sort of like, growth stocks that boom and bust. Driven by variation in precipitation. So we go through these boom phases where there's water everywhere, and we've been in one of those for about the past 30 years. But we know the bust cycle where things dry out is also very important to recycle nutrients and sort of reset the stage. Science information that we have would tell us that after we go dry and when we get wet again, that's when the birds are the most productive. We're just seeing that drought cycle start this year. The Boreal is more like bonds, sort of stable. The water's pretty stable, doesn't go through the big fluctuations that we see in the prairies.
There we go.
But a lot of those birds, puddlers and other ducks, and there's a lot of divers nest in the prairies. If they find no water, their next plan B is to keep going north until they find enough water to nest, and that's the Boreal.
DU has done a terrific job with over the years is that they look at the holistic picture of waterfowl management. They're not just looking at Ducks Unlimited in the United States. It starts with DU Canada. It continues with Ducks Unlimited in the States, and then goes into the wintering habitat with DUMAC, or Ducks Unlimited Mexico. So they're managing the continental population.
That's unique. Governments can't do that. Other organizations are not set up to do that. We're really the only organization that's set up to really think about the big picture and what birds need all over the different times of the year and all across the continent.
I'm big on the continental resource. I mean, we got to look after these birds and make sure the habitat's there, right from starting up here in the Boreal right down to Mexico where the birds winters.
I totally agree. I think that people too often get wound up, in their state or their county or their province or whatever the smaller piece may be. But at the end of the day, we're moving the ball forward for ducks, moving it forward for water. That's important.
When I had the opportunity to become president of DU Canada, it was a real honor and a privilege.
And he would be the first Canadian president, which would be so appropriate because it really would mirror DU's continental approach to conservation, is to have a Canadian
two more.
Who knows what goes on at the northern end of the flyway, also be very responsible for what happens at the southern end.
Species we're seeing up here end up wintering in Mexico, and for ducks to be able to kind of pull all that together and cooperate in protecting those resources is just a real pleasure to have that level of cooperation.
The Boreal Forest is one of the last great frontiers on Earth, a vast wilderness with 1/3 located in Canada and Alaska. North America's share is the largest intact forest on the planet, covering an astounding 1.6 billion acres. It's a wet forest with millions of lakes, wetlands, streams, and rivers comprising 20% of the boreal landscape. When it comes to breeding habitat, the Boreal Forest is the great bird nursery of North America. An estimated 3 to 5 billion birds fly south from the boreal every fall, with the western boreal forest typically hosting 12 to 14 million breeding ducks. This number includes mallards, scaup, green-winged teal, American widgeon, and scoters, among other species. The region also provides important breeding and molting habitat for white-fronted geese, Canada and cackling geese, and trumpeter swans. Beginning in 2000, Ducks Unlimited joined forces with charitable trusts, industries, conservation organizations, and indigenous people to build the conservation framework. The goal consisted of 50% protected lands and 50% sustainable development with conservation-minded industries. The plan is working well, but we must continue our support for indigenous-led conservation far into the future, ensuring a healthy and vibrant boreal forest. To find out more about the boreal forest and how you can help DU conserve it, please visit ducks.org.
DU Insights is brought to you by Mossy Oak Properties. Find your favorite place at mossyoakproperties.com.
I think we are at a point where it's a pretty exciting time for conservation in the boreal because we have significant investment by the Canadian federal government in working with many of the indigenous communities across the boreal.
Tell me a little bit about the Boreal Initiative, because I think the approach to habitat and conservation is very different in this part of the world than what it is in the prairies, for example.
The work is very different. You know, a lot of work with indigenous communities across the north, work with territorial governments, provincial governments, and the federal government, because most of the land is either crown land or indigenous owned. We don't do what we typically think of as direct conservation, where we go buy a piece of property or, you know, purchase a conservation easement like we do in the prairies. You know, there's more a focus on working with the industries that work across the boreal, forest product industries, you know, timber companies, to improve their practices, and we've seen a lot of progress with that. And then really working with those indigenous communities to provide them with maybe some technical capacity that they don't have in their community that we can bring in, you know, GIS, that kind of information to help them map and see what resources they have there, and then they make the decisions about which of these areas do we want to set aside, you know, and protect, which of these areas do we want to develop in a smart and sustainable way.
We're pretty leading edge in terms of making sure we've got a collaborative agreements for protections of that boreal resource. For me, seeing where the funds and resources that we raise are applied and how they're benefiting the waterfowl resource, and not only just our ducks and geese and waterfowl, but so many other species that take advantage of our habitats we create for waterfowl.
What's this hand coming in? Yes.
When we talk about protection of habitat, you know, we're talking, I think, about water quality and watershed protection, and that's something that we've put a little more thought into lately as Ducks Unlimited.
I think we're recognizing that that's becoming more and more important, not only for the wildlife that we care about,
Look out, heads up,
but for people in general. You know, as we see issues with things like water quality and things like climate change, the work that we do is relevant for people who love ducks, but relevant for everybody who cares about, you know, just living on Earth. So,
you know, some of our projects and habitat we protect, there's hundreds of species that our habitat protection is critical to, all the way from up north here, down south, through to Mexico. Some of the work we do in Mexico conserving habitat is, there's this socioeconomic benefit to people, where we're improving watersheds and water quality for society or people in some areas of Mexico. Whether you're a hunter or a conservationist or a bird watcher, DU just does such tremendous work putting their money in the ground, protecting habitat, run a very efficient operation, whether it's Canada, the US, or Mexico.
What drives me for making progress for the ducks is, some of the most enjoyable time that I have is out in these wild places, seeing the birds do the things that they do. So, all throughout my career, I've been driven by passion, and many days can't believe I get paid to do the things that I do.
It's important when you go to the range that you practice the shots and the situations you might encounter in the field. I like to shoot my target guns all summer, and I shoot trap and skeet and sporting clays, but as we get closer to the season, it's time to get your hunting gun out. If it's cool enough, maybe wear your hunting clothes so that you can practice with some of the layers that you'll be wearing during the hunt. Practice the shots that you'll see in the field. It's time to start shooting incomers and crossers and quartering in birds and that type of thing, overhead shots. And if you shoot sitting down, bring a bucket, sit on it and practice shooting that way. Or sit on the bucket, call for the target, and then stand up if that's how you shoot in the blind. Shoot with a low gun. Don't take your safety off until you're ready to shoot. Make it as much like the duck blind as you can. Now, one thing you cannot do is bring your hunting loads to the gun club. For safety reasons, all gun clubs require target loads, and that is a good idea. So if you want to practice with your hunting loads, you'll have to do that at home. Come to the range, shoot small shot, but everything else, make it as much like hunting as you can, and you'll find you'll have a lot more success when it comes time to shoot at ducks and geese.
Ducks Unlimited's Guns and Gear is brought to you by Tetra Hearing, built for hunters by hunters. Calls, wings, or triggers, hear the hunt like never before. DUTV is powered by Browning Ammunition, the best there is. Biologic, scientifically proven wildlife products. Purina Pro Plan, nutrition that performs. Tetra Hearing, more than hearing protection, it's hearing perfection. Mossy Oak Properties, America's land specialist. Closed captioning for Ducks Unlimited Television is brought to you by Mossy Oak Bottomland, the official timber pattern of Ducks Unlimited.
Yeah. I don't know how I could tell you more about how Canadian this trip could have gotten unless we maybe went to a hockey game, I guess, but we literally sat over the decoys. That's more like it, boys. That's what we're looking for. And, could hear this animal not very far away. We sat there, we'd been shooting ducks, we were waiting to shoot more ducks. And we heard this whoop whoop noise in the trees, and literally Scott Stevens, the biologist from DU that's with us, literally called a moose into the decoy spread. I mean, if I told this story at a cocktail party, I don't think anyone would believe me. It doesn't get any more Canadian than that, I guess. As past president of DU Canada, if you could put a billboard on the border between the U.S. and Canada and put anything on there that you wanted, what would it say?
I'd probably say, welcome U.S. hunters.
You're a gracious host.
Well, and true story, hunters have been, started the organization. They still are some of our biggest supporters across the continent.
And they fund the conservation work.
Hunters are really an important part of conservation because they've been there from the start. We're out there in unique situations. We see the birds doing lots of cool things that just your average bird watcher would probably not see. By being in those situations, you develop a passion for the birds. You want to understand what they're doing, and once you understand that, it's easy to invest in making sure that the birds are taken care of and that they have the habitat base that they need to be successful. So I think we need to sort of transfer that and get more people who are not hunters.
Oh, there's a single.
To develop that passion and support conservation with their investment.
This has been spectacular. I mean, to see this part of the world at this time of the year is just, I don't know, they say people like Paris in the spring, but I really like the Peace River country in the fall.
Yeah, no, this part of Northwest Alberta is a pretty special place.
Yeah, well, thanks again. We really appreciate you having with us. You know, and I know that, you know, we make DUTV episodes and it takes people scouting and boat riding and doing all this stuff, and I just want to thank you for the work. I appreciate it.
It's nice to be without, you know, people that, you know, like the resource and like to see good habitat, but like to see new places.
Yeah, if someone has a passion for waterfowl, or if you just care about the environment, I think getting engaged with Ducks Unlimited is a really great way to make that contribution back and have an impact, a positive impact on, you know, making the world a better place. We really do have a large impact. We're able to leverage dollars and engage with a whole bunch of other partners and bring new monies to the table to get lots of things done on the ground. And that's really where the rubber meets the road. You know, it's the habitat base that's out there that's important for birds and important for people and important for all the things that, you know, make the earth livable for us. So I think DU is a good investment, and we put that money to work and have impact.
Ducks Unlimited has a long history of outstanding leadership across North America. We'd like to thank Mr. Jack Hull for all he's done for Ducks Unlimited Canada, and Ducks Unlimited de Mexico. Ducks Unlimited is North America's leader in wetlands conservation because of the time and effort of leaders like Jack Hull. Thanks for watching, and please join us next week for more exciting action on DUTV.
Tell me when you're ready and I'll start rolling.
I'm good to go.
Well, it's always, Scott, it's always a pleasure.
All right.
You say that and then you're not ready.
I know. Now roll.
Boreal.
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 Boreal, okay. It's just south of Canada's vast Boreal Forest. I did it again, didn't I?
Boreal.
Boreal. Let me try again. Boreal. Goodness gracious.
Boreal.
You think I can remember that? Coming up next on DUTV.